All right. Hello, everybody. This is a new ChUG podcast. We call this one 2022 in review. We try to be as relevant as possible. So we're going to talk about stuff happening before they do. So, it's great. We're here with the gang. Laura Johnston, Associate Scientific Director at the University of Chicago. Pat Sims is the manager of the core facility at Loyola. Ryan Duggan is area scientist. Senior scientist, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
How's everybody doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. I haven't seen you in a while.
Can we get a close-up of that shirt that you're wearing?
Yes. I am
so
not.
Are you a Flow Star?
I'm a Flow Star fan. I'm not. This is not my case for trying to be on the podcast. I'm not. I don't consider myself a star yet. I saw that Peter O'Toole is going down the list of stars, and is at Paul Wallace now. So I'm way down the line. So I'll wait.
Yeah.
It's a great podcast.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah.
Oh, these interesting people on there.
Yeah. So the point of this podcast, I wanted to talk about the upcoming year, and we wanted to record this before we went to ABRF, which was a couple of weeks ago, last week, and that didn't happen. So me and Laura went to ABRF in Palm Springs. Did you guys sign up? Did you hear anything about the ABRF meeting? No.
Yeah, I feel like I'm totally out of the loop on those meetings these days.
It was ABRF is a hard meeting to pinpoint. It's basically it started with sequencing people, genomics, and then there's a lot of administration stuff, and then somehow flow cytometry, microscopy got tagged along. And so when you go to the meeting, it's really hard to find the pathway through the meeting that's going to keep you occupied. There's always stuff that you go like, this is not my field, and but it was very interesting for the most part. Julie Auger asked me and a few colleagues to organize the flow cytometry components of that meeting. We tagged in Laura to talk about spectral flow, and that was well received. My part, we did a talk with a gentleman called Dieter Rechtenwald, which I think I'd like to have on the podcast at some point. He's retired now, but has been working at BD for a huge amount of time, and he basically talked about the history of flow, and his point was like spectral flow. We kind of see it as something that popped up in 2016, 2011, if you think about Sony, but like people have been trying to do spectral flow forever. And so that was kind of his spiel, basically. There's a lot of work behind that, behind spectral. Otherwise, what there was there to say?
So do like vendors and stuff? The regular flow vendors, are they there, and do they like talk about products and stuff, or is it?
There's a few.
It was different, definitely. I found it interesting too because it was located in Palm Springs, and since we're in Chicago, we know all the Midwest people, and I don't think it's a big enough conference. It's not like ISAC, so they send all the vendors. So they probably just send the local West Coast one. So even the vendors that were there, it's all the West Coast reps. So I'm not even familiar with just those reps specifically. But yeah, there were a few. I think it was Miltenny and Fluidigm, Cytec, one person. Were there any other flow vendors?
I don't remember. I don't think so. BD was there.
I don't recall seeing a booth, I guess.
They had a booth, no Symphony. They had some other technology showcased.
Guess I missed it. That's right. They sponsored my session.
Yeah. BD opened Laura's session on spectral flow with the most lackluster presentation on spectral flow. It was just,
Oh, no.
you could just feel how BD is being dragged into this new era of flow stoichiometry, and they just don't want to. They just.
Well, so what is it? Is it just their sorter or a version of the Symphony that has some kind of spectral capability?
That's the last one. So the Symphony, I want to say A5 or.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then they just tacked on SE. And then I think the S actually stands for special. I don't think it was spectral. I think he kept on saying special.
Yeah.
And it was like special stuff. And then, yeah, he definitely marketed the presentation as, well, everyone else is doing this, so I guess we'll do this too.
It was a strange way to present spectral, especially in that session.
So it doesn't have like a ton of detectors on it, right? Does it just have like was it 28 or something?
Yeah. So the feeling I get is that they took their current instrument, the A5, and plugged the holes that they had in their set of detectors to cover the entire spectrum. I think the number of detectors roughly matches the Bigfoot. So at 50, the range of 50 something.
Yeah, I think it was like high 40s or low 50s.
Right.
I should know. I put it in my slides, but I've already forgotten.
And it's unclear to me at this point if you do live spectral as you acquire your data, or if it's always something where you basically make all your measurements throughout of these detectors, and the spectral flow, the spectral analysis comes afterwards during your analysis. So your unmixing happens while you analyze the data, not while you acquire. I'm not clear on that. That's the way I understood this presentation, is that it happens afterwards, but I'm not clear.
I just checked. It's 43 detectors.
43. Okay.
Bigfoot is 55. Aurora is 64 for just the fluorophores.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as people get more of these instruments out there, you'll be able to see directly what the benefit or lack of benefit there is with having more detectors.
Yeah.
Doesn't the newer Sony one have like 120 detectors or something like that?
It's higher than that, I think.
Is it? Yeah. If you have like almost 7 lasers or something like that.
Yeah. ABRF also made the bet that they could do a hybrid meeting, and that didn't work all that well. I don't think they tried to present all the presentation live as well as broadcasted on Zoom, and there was a lot of technical glitch at pretty much every sessions. Not always with Zoom, sometimes with your PowerPoint slides that wouldn't show your images and stuff like that. But I think this is in part the difficulty of doing something like that, but also just finding enough good staff to run these type of companies. I think we're going to talk about it later, how it's hard to find flow stoichiometrists in our field. I think it's across the board, and so that group seemed to be having difficulty finding good technicians to organize the AV at that meeting. So it was a bit unfortunate.
They hired a company to do the virtual component. I guess I was a little surprised at the planning that the company did. I mean, they didn't really offer the speakers any sort of speaker ready room or, designated times to make sure that your presentation was loaded on the computer correctly and that everybody knew what was going to be shown at that session. So I don't know. I guess they also chose to do a pretty complex setup, which made things challenging. I mean, you could go like the flow text route where you just have a YouTube live that runs for however many hours. But this setup was each session had its own Zoom link. And so in order to go from one session to the next, you're constantly switching around Zoom links, which I guess makes sense if you have concurrent sessions, but just all the added complexity of that just, I'm sure, made things much harder to manage.
Yeah.
So what do you think about ABRF in general? Is it relevant? Is it relevant to flow cytometrists? Because I feel like it's that there's been a contingent of flow cytometry people that have been pushing ABRF for a number of years, and it's really never seemed to have taken off. And I don't know if that's because there's not enough quantity, and so ISAC is a better bang for your buck, or if there's just I don't know. Some people told me they didn't feel as though flow cytometry was really something that ABRF wanted, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a fair point. There's a lot of meetings, and they all are pretty expensive. And so in the end of the day, you can't go to all of them. You need to pick and choose. ABRF would not make the top of my list. I don't think. It's like I said, it's a weird collection of people. You're going to go there, you're going to spot all your flow cytometrist buddies, and you're going to hang out with them. But then after that, there's few connections that gets made at all, I feel.
Yeah, I didn't really connect with the non-flow cytometrists. I guess for me, I hadn't met a lot of the flow cytometry people. They're sort of in a different region, or I don't know, I just hadn't run across them. And so it was kind of interesting to meet some different people. And I guess I thought that they have a flow cytometry research group, and I thought they were doing some pretty interesting things. They have some interesting ideas on working with community colleges to try to come up with a training track, sort of like within the sort of community college biotechnology track. You could take one 5-week course or something, I forget, that's flow cytometry related, that would hopefully sort of funnel into shared resource laboratories, which I think is a really cool idea.
Yeah. Well then, going forward this year, there's a few meetings coming up. There's the CYTO meeting. So Pat and Ryan, are you going to CYTO?
Don't know.
Don't know yet.
No.
Ryan?
Yeah, I'm still undecided at this point. We actually just got permission to travel again.
Ooh.
Actually go to meetings. It just happened this past month. So the problem is that nobody knew whether we were going to be able to travel this year, so there wasn't really a budget put forth for travel and meeting registrations. And so now it's like only the essential meetings, and for a limited number of people, it's going to be possible. So we'll see if I make the cut or not. But
Well, and there's got the new different gradations of memberships that you have now,
Yep.
and then you pay different amounts to go to the meeting. So since I'm a super platinum, I'm going for free. But there's the whole thing about, well, that's a whole different other subject about people wanting retirees to get reduced rates, and
Yeah.
it just feels like there's a lot more emphasis on money from the society right now than there used to be.
You want to talk about that? Like, there's a Purdue kerfuffle that got started by Zip, who's a flow cytometrist from Florida, who is now retired. And he's been talking about that for a while, actually, because the ISAC has been doing a bunch of town halls to discuss their new gradation of sponsorship, and it's not sponsorship, but the what's the word? Membership. Blah. And so he immediately started talking about, well, I'm not gonna be able to get anybody to sponsored me for like this, and I just want to attend the meeting and see my friends and just keep track of what's going on and whatnot. And I still think this is, the guy has been there forever, has been to pretty much every meeting. Just give that to him. Like, what's the problem? And so it's not, my beef is not so much that they are refusing to do it, or I don't know if there's a final decision being made, but like they're not even talking to the guy. It's just like he's talking, sending a bunch of emails and nobody's replying. It's just like,
Yeah.
so anyway, ISAC is getting some amount of flack lately on the Purdue. One rather hostile comment from a colleague in Europe thinks ISAC is a shiny facade. Facade. Sorry. Which is uncalled for. I don't think there's nothing shiny about the facade. Sorry, joke.
Oh,
I mean, I never went to any of the business meetings or finance meetings, so I don't really know the ins and outs of the cost of putting on a meeting at that scale. But I wonder, is it really just there to cover costs, or are they actually trying to make money on the conference? Because if it's the latter, even more reason to give some free registrations to some of the members emeritus. I mean, if it's just there to cover costs, then it's hard to, say that anybody can go for free. But yeah, I would imagine they're trying to make money off the meeting, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to say. We never know exactly what the general goals are of this organization. The back to the membership levels, I'm kind of puzzled too by. So it used to be when I started in Chicago, right? We'd go to ISAC and we'd be a member. Like that was it. The cost of attending the meeting was about $100. Like it was like registration was like several hundred of dollars, but then your membership registration was a few $100. And if you paid on the spot, then you got a discount. So you kind of did it, and it all worked out. And at some point, ISAC decided that the members needed to get some perks from this membership. And that's when you saw stuff like CYTO come out, and these accreditation for the flow stometrist recognition program, or whatever they call it. And then lately, it's like now your lab can be recognized by ISAC, and it's all a bunch of stuff that does not help you professionally or does not help your lab in any way. It's just like there to like give you a thumbs up, and you kind of it's more of a personal, badge of honor or something. So it's kind of hard for me to justify why you would even pay for these lower tiers of that membership when you're not going to go to the meeting in the end. Like the meeting is the big thing that's the thing that's really useful that you want to go to. All the rest is, even CYTO to a degree, like it's behind a paywall. You're going to go see a bunch of webinars. I'd say like Laura gave more presentation on our YouTube channel than CYTO. So what's the
I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Because the flow cytometry community is so close knit and small enough, and super generous with their time and their knowledge. Right. So normally, if you think about an umbrella organization like ISAC, they would be doing all the things that we just do as colleagues of each other for nothing, because like, yeah, if Pat called me up and said, hey, can you give a talk in my place about whatever? Sure, no problem. It's not like she's got to pay me to come there or do that. I mean, I think that, I don't know how unique it is to the flow world, but it seems somewhat unique and really precludes the need for an umbrella organization like ISAC. But I think that's why things like all these other perks are not very attractive to us, because I mean,
Yeah.
We already get that from our colleagues.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a discussion that Jill had when she was with the American Bar Association is, are we here for the members or are we here for ourselves? Because they would plan all these meetings and have publications and all of that stuff. And that was a real internal struggle. What is our mission? And it could be that the ISAC people have a different idea of what their mission is than what we think it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's also kind of an interesting disconnect between, a lot of people that participate in ISAC, not all of them, but a lot of them are people in positions like ours, where we're working with flow cytometers and helping users. And I don't know what the percentage is between people in SRLs versus people doing research. There are definitely people doing research, but I don't know how unique I was as a case. But when I was a graduate student, I didn't know about ISAC. And I don't know how many people who do flow cytometry as a researcher know about ISAC and know that they have CYTO-U and things like that. And so are the people who are attending these CYTO-U webinars or, whatever ISAC is offering to people, is it mostly people in SRLs? Is it mostly people doing research? Certainly people I meet are more in the SRLs. So to me, it kind of seems like there's a lot of SRL people, but I don't know the exact numbers.
Well, and that's a good point, because your average graduate student or postdoc is going to go to a conference in their field of study. They're not going to go to CYTO. Plus, all the other benefits like CYTO-U and whatnot, they're probably getting all that material from their local flow cytometry core anyway. So really, where's the case of a researcher using flow cytometry that's not using a core facility or doesn't have access to a core facility and the kind of the knowledge base of a core facility? Like, that seems relatively rare, that you would just be kind of on your own island using flow cytometry as a research scientist and not have the benefit of a flow core facility and personnel to get you the training and bring in the cutting edge applications and instruments and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, even more reason to question what the point of ISAC is.
Because I feel like we sort of have this disconnect with, ISAC can come up with, is it the MyFlow site? And, like ways to talk about flow cytometry data or publish flow cytometry data and all that. And then all the people in the SRLs hear about it, but we're not necessarily the ones who are publishing it. So then it's on us to let all of our users know about it, or should ISAC be the one that's trying to get that information more out to the researchers, not going to the SRLs? Or I don't know what's the best way.
Or they should be going to the journal editors and saying, this is what you need to demand out of your papers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's, I think, where it's going to have to come from.
Yeah, that's probably a better place to go.
I think CYTO-U had some a series of original material at some point about SRLs, and that was not something I've seen elsewhere. So that was great. I question putting CYTO-U behind a paywall. It's not. Yeah, that's where my beef is essentially. Well, anyway, so we don't have much to say about. I'm not going to CYTO for familial reason, because I'm starting a family.
Even better.
Yeah, and Laura is not going either, so I guess we don't have much to say about CYTO.
I'd also, if I did go, I'm going to the annual course, which is also in June.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I went, then I'd just be like not there the whole month of June.
Yeah, there's that too. Other meetings that we're involved with includes GLIIFCA. Laura is the president this year, and she's done some interesting small changes to this meeting that I think are going to make it much, much, much better. I think Pat and Ryan, you've both been to GLIIFCA. So GLIIFCA is essentially Great Lakes International Imaging Flow Cytometry Association, international because Canada. And typically it's a meeting that starts on a Friday afternoon. We have a core manager meeting. There's a reception that's on Saturday, and then Friday night, and then Saturday and Sunday morning, we're just like bombarded with one talk after another, and it never stops. And so Laura this year decided, hold on, guys. Laura, you want to talk about what you want to do?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing I did was set some goals for the meeting. So I proposed 2 goals, and it seemed like everyone was on board with them. So looking at the history of attendees, although we don't have the best, we weren't necessarily doing the best job of gathering information from all the previous attendees as to like who they are, where they work in general. But in the last, 5 years or so, we have quite a few attendees who are working in an SRL, and we have a few attendees who are kind of falling into the research trainee category, grad students, postdocs, people like that. And so I asked the board, do we want to make this a goal to try to boost these trainees? Because in talking to the founders of GLIIFCA, it sounds like their original plan was to have a meeting that would allow trainees an opportunity to present, to meet experts in the flow cytometry field, bring people together. So it seems like the attendance of trainees is on the lower side in recent years. So I set a goal for, let's try to boost those numbers, maybe work on reaching out to the local universities and making the meeting known to them and exciting for these graduate students, postdocs, people like that. So goal number 1 is to try to boost the attendance of those people. And then the second goal, somebody brought up a point, which I thought was very smart, that with the whole pandemic and going from a virtual setting and transitioning back to in-person or maybe hybrid, we've had virtual meetings. And so if you're someone who needs to talk to your administrators and provide an argument as to why your admins need to pay for you to go to this meeting, and you need to demonstrate why it's important to go to an in-person meeting when maybe it could just be done online. So the most obvious thing that is different about an in-person meeting is networking. And I think that's probably one of the top things that people like about GLIIFCA is talking to the people there, seeing the people there. And so trying to add in opportunities and make it really prominent, a prominent part of the meeting to give you time to interact with the other attendees. And you're not just there sitting, listening to lecture after lecture after lecture. So in looking at the past schedules, we had 12 to 15 speakers in a day and a half, which if you look at what I thought are comparative meetings, one example would be Autumn Immunology Conference in Chicago, which is targeted to trainees. They have 4 scientific talkers per day. So we have a much higher number. So I thought, let's maybe trim down some of the scientific speakers and allow a little bit more space in the schedule so that you do have a lot more opportunity to interact with more of the attendees. So there aren't too many changes in the schedule, actually. Probably the biggest one is just reducing the number of scientific speakers. So I think there's still 9 total scientific speakers planned. I also added in a panel discussion. So the meeting will close with discussion as opposed to just a lecture. What else did I change? We're gonna try to revamp the poster session because the posters, there's this huge debate about, do people like poster sessions? Do they not like poster sessions? Do they bring something to the meeting? So we're gonna try out the flash talk format. So people will submit abstracts, and then the top ones will get short presentations. And then we're also going to try out virtual posters. We'll see how that goes. So if you don't get a flash talk, then you'll submit a very short recorded presentation that people will be able to view. So hopefully I will find a way to make sure that people can easily access those virtual posters and that they know that they're there, and hopefully it will be good. I also decided to add in another section, so splitting the abstract submission, given that we do have a lot of people that work in an SRL, and it's kind of hard to submit a standard research abstract. So there'll be one section where you can submit a research abstract, and then a totally separate section where you can submit something. I don't know if we finalized the name yet, but maybe like core management, something along those lines. So you can submit something, whatever you want. Like maybe you came up with a way to do virtual training in your facility, or maybe it's a case study on some really interesting project that had all these troubleshooting things. Maybe you submit that as an abstract, or I don't know, whatever you can think of, get creative.
I think that's great, because I've been thinking a lot about how relevant are meetings anyway.
Mhm.
Because we do a lot of things on Zoom seminars, and there's a real nice benefit to doing a lot of these things on, if instead of stopping your experiment, you can put it on the lab computer and you can continue to do some things, so your day flows a little bit better, and you can still get the benefit of going to the seminar. And and I think we just have to make sure we try to revamp ourselves and keep relevant, because it's easy to just stay with what was, but if we did that, we wouldn't have spectral analyzers. So
If I give a flash talk, do I have to use an overhead projector and transparencies to project it?
We'll have to think about it. Well, no, AIC did modernize the very last year that I was a grad student, which was, I guess, 2016, because I graduated in fall of 2017. So I graduated just before AIC that year. But in 2016, they actually did do TVs.
That was always the best part, because then you can make fun of the youngsters who never saw a transparency overhead projector. And they're like putting it backwards and flipping it over and flipping it over again.
Yep.
And it's actually a different skill. I remember I felt so bad for this girl. She was really nervous, and she didn't realize that she had rested her hand on the overhead projector while she was presenting. And because she was so nervous, she was shaking. And that meant she was shaking the overhead projector. And then the whole screen was just shaking. I'm like, oh no, it's okay that you're nervous, but just take your hand off.
So GLIIFCA is in September. Following that is the ChUG workshop, which we have yet to announce. We should probably do that before we release the podcast, but essentially the ChUG podcast, the ChUG workshop is, Ryan, you want to talk about the ChUG workshop? That's your idea.
Sure. Yeah. It's quite an endeavor, but the main gist of it is giving some practical knowledge and presentations on how to execute a high dimensional flow cytometry experiment. So it's not necessarily for the beginner, but even people who are early on in their flow expertise will be able to pick up quite a bit. So we'll have a few different lectures, and we'll have some virtual hands-on demonstrations showing acquisition on instrumentation, data analysis techniques, all the information you'll need for building panels, evaluating all the plethora of new fluorophores that are out there, et cetera. So yeah, I think it's a big endeavor on our part, and I think it'll be hugely beneficial for anybody who wants to jump into the high dimensional flow cytometry area.
Anybody in Chicago?
We're going to target people in Chicago, mostly members of the main core, so Loyola, UIC, Northwestern, and UFC. And that's going to give us the opportunity to try out. So essentially, the whole class will be pinned on the framework of an experiment that we're currently, I wouldn't say designing, but what would you say, Pat?
Thinking about. No, there were details I hadn't worked out how we wanted to get the antibodies, who we were going to approach and how we were going to approach that. So that's why I haven't done any of those assignments yet, is because I just didn't know. And then I thought also folks would want to look at what I've done and give their comment, their feedback and stuff like that.
Right.
So.
Right. But the general idea is that we'll have this experimental framework that we're going to use to discuss every single aspect of the experiment design. So experiment design, panel design, and will all be linked to this experiment. So that will allow us to follow the whole shebang with actual data. So ChUG workshop in November. I'm going to give one last meeting. This one would be February 2023, and none of you are involved in this. This is me and the Canadians, and Laura was in there as well. Actually, that's not true anymore. Sorry, but this is the meeting would be targeting the core facility personnel in flow cytometry and microscopy, and we wanted to get rid of all the science, just like. We don't want to hear about the CD4, blah, blah, blah. So this is not what this meeting is going to be about. We just want to focus on core facility topics. And the novelty here that we're going to try to do is involve the manufacturers of instruments and products that we use in our core facility into the discussion. And so think of it this way. Normally in a general meeting, we're going to get the vendors to pay for whatever we're doing, and we kind of keep them at arm's length in terms of whatever they're going to try to present and talk about. We just don't really let them we'll have their sales pitch every now and then, but overall they're kind of put away from actual presentations. The general idea in that specific meeting is to recognize that the vendors are a huge part of the work that we do in core facilities. And there's a bunch of questions that we have, a bunch of issues that we face that which would be much better answered if we had open discussions with the vendors. And so that's essentially what this meeting will try to tackle. So essentially start discussions with the vendors about different topics. So one of them, for example, recently on the Purdue list, and everything happens on the Purdue list. What a great list this is. But anyway, the Purdue list, there was a bunch of people who started discussing how when you look at the manufacturers of antibodies website, the data that you get about the different antibodies is kind of weird. Sometimes it's like completely off. Sometimes it's just like potentially like, I don't know what's the word. Like it's a whole weird thing. So that's something we could discuss with the vendors and see what is needed to fix that issue and what can be done. So how the course could potentially help figuring out this thing.
So how are you going to disseminate the information that this is available? Are you going to do that through the regular, like the Purdue list and things like that?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's a creative meeting that's different than the other ones out there, but I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and I think the topic is, well, at least that part of it, right? So the relying on the vendor generated data to be accurate is pretty huge. I mean, even recently, right, because we rely on that pretty heavily. When you go look for an antibody, you immediately just go to that figure and say, oh, this is what we can expect the staining to look like. Even more so, I have the opportunity to be included on a manuscript that's being submitted, and part of the process is filling out a data integrity form that asks you not only what are all the antibodies and catalog numbers that you use, but how are they validated so that that they are specific to the antigen that they say they're specific to. And typically people will just write, go to biolegend.com. The validation is there. So not only are we using that, but now this is part of the publication that I'm telling them, the publishing house, that this antibody is validated, it is specific, based off of that data that I saw on their website. And so even more critical, now somebody else will read that paper and say, oh yeah, they used the CD4 from BioLegend, I'm going to go use that too. And, we repeat the same problems over and over again. Yeah. So I don't know if they realize how critical that data is on their website.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. All right. Back to ABRF. I was invited by Milton to talk about our experience with the CYTO, which I'm always happy to do. I feel like it's a great sorter, and it's not getting enough attention yet. CYTO got an upgrade, which makes it the easiest platform on the market. I want to talk about this, the state of the cell sorting in flow cytometry land. I'm this year we need to make a proposal for a new cell sorter that's going to replace our aging equipment, and I'm getting nervous about what I should be asking for. We received a Bigfoot last year, and the Bigfoot is going through growing issues. Let's put it this way. Other platforms would include BD, Symphony, which I'm not happy with BD right now, so I'm not looking at it too closely. I would think the Aurora cell sorter would be potentially a great instrument, but I've never seen it, and I haven't heard of anybody using this machine. So now we're down to like the mid-range machines, so the Cytoflex sorter or the maybe a Sony. So I don't know, what's your guys' position on this on the field right now?
I mean, I it kind of depends on what kind of sorting you do. Because right, the big differentiator is high parameter sorting. Like, are you actually trying to run a 20 color panel to isolate a specific immune subset, or are you just generating cell lines? You know, sorting GFP, sorting CRISPR knockouts, etc. I do a lot of the latter. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I've had more than 2 or maybe 3 colors run on a sorter, max. All we do is generate cell lines, mostly cloning into plates. And if that were your situation, then something like the Sony, only because I know that platform, it would be a great option. It doesn't have to do a lot of colors. It does plates really, really well. And it's pretty easy to use. I mean, if you have to translate your Aurora panels to a sorter, obviously the Aurora sorter would be the easiest transition, I would imagine. But you know, having something like the Bigfoot or a Symphony sorter would probably serve that purpose too. So, I mean, I guess that's like, I wouldn't say like, well, I had hoped that the Bigfoot was basically the best of all worlds, right? You could do your high dimensional stuff there. You could do your quick cloning. You could do whatever, really low dimensional stuff, really high dimensional stuff. One instrument to rule them all, and maybe it'll get there. I mean, the demos were just so sweet that it's like, how could it not be killing it?
Maybe we can say a few words about the Bigfoot. We have it in our facility. I'm an N of 1, so I've heard of other facilities where Bigfoot is doing great. But in our core, there's a problem with the efficiency of sorting. It's a much slower machine for whatever reason. The automation fails. Whenever you get to QC, there's often problems that forces you to like you need to find your way around the way the software wants to get set up so that you can get the instrument to run properly. It's one of these things where I'm at the point where I'd like to tell manufacturers to like knock it off with the automation. You know, we ran MoFlows back in the days. We can run this one too. Like you don't need us. We don't need you to like hold our hands and do the whole shebang on your own. Like this is a $600,000 machine that we're using at 50% of its capacity. I feel like we should, you know, have a bit more leeway in the way we utilize our instruments.
Also find
So is it like the
Yes.
issues? Yeah, really? Okay, because that was like the big sticking point when I was talking to them, because I lived through the beta stages of the Avalon, and that was pretty horrible. And they were like, no, this is way better. You know, the gimbals, the automated gimbals that have 6 axis of rotation and translation and whatever, and the software behind it are so much better, but maybe not.
The problem is whenever you when something happens and you need to like turn off the computer, maybe it froze, or maybe like whatever happened, the instrument will restart the whole process from the start. Like, and that's another 15 minutes of your life that you kind of, to do that a couple of times, and that hour that the users booked for sort kind of went to waste. So
I find it interesting that in our facility, I mean, I don't think we had a lot of requests before. I think maybe 5 or less people before we got the Bigfoot, were saying, oh, when are you getting a spectral sorter? And then now that we have a sorter that has the capability to go really high, we have had 0 people come to us.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just we happen to not have projects that are interested in that, or I don't know. I always kind of envisioned that the standard workflow would be you would run your experiment on an analyzer, look at tons and tons of markers, find something interesting, and then develop a more focused, smaller panel to take to the sorter and then sort your cells of interest. But
Yeah, but I think the
I
like,
could be wrong.
well, I always thought like the holy grail is, you don't differentiate between a sorter and an analyzer anymore. You just have a cytometer that you're running your high dimensional stuff, collecting data. You're like, oh, that's an interesting population. Let me just sort it. So you draw a region and you hit sort and it goes. And there's no like setup to it or anything. But it's like every instrument is an analyzer and a sorter. It's just a cytometer, and has a front end loader and a back end plate sorter, cloning sorting arm and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be a great instrument, I think. But then like the sorting setup has to be, not even like no user interface at all to it. Right. So you'd have to have like so much trust in it that all you're doing is hitting the power button and running your QC beads. And then it's, doing the regular QC plus the sort streams and all that kind of stuff. But an end user is just like waiting for the past, green check mark so they can put their samples on.
The CytoFlex is getting there. I feel like it's the closest one to this. But then you have features that are awesome, say on the Bigfoot. It's not all bad. And I'll say this, like Thermo Fisher is visibly putting a lot of effort in resolving a lot of situations. So we get a bunch of software upgrades that are sent out pretty often. Plate sorting on the Bigfoot is freakishly amazing. It's so quick. You can do, I think Mike did 30 plates in about an hour or something. It was insane. So there's that. So there's the basic functions of your cell sorters, and then there's the features that you're looking for your specific application. So it's back to what you're saying, Ryan. So the CYTO, for example, if you're really concerned about the quality of the cells at the output of the sort, it's probably the best instrument you can find. If it's for like a core facility where you don't have a lot of staff and you want people to be able to sort on their own, then the CytoFlex will be a better fit. If you want high-end parameters, then you need the Bigfoot, the BD, the Aurora sorter.
Well, so do you, regarding like CYTO sorting in general, I mean, so first of all, like the little demo I did by your place was pretty darn impressive, right? I took a sample that was less than 1% viability and did sequential sorts and got it above 90%, which would be great for sticking that sample into 10x or something like that. So, and the fact that it's, not inducing any kind of stresses on the cell, right? So you can be more assured there than anywhere else that your cells are going to be in a pretty good condition for whatever downstream application you have. So like why do I still not like it? I mean, I don't know. I probably shouldn't get into this here, but it's just like, it's so close to being a really awesome instrument, but like optically, I don't like it.
No, yeah.
Scatter is pretty much useless. Not that I use scatter a ton, but having that as kind of something, some other parameter to correlate stuff to would be nice. But yeah, I mean, how can we put that sorting mechanism on something that's more optically sound and like a more traditional front end flow cytometer type thing? I mean, that would be a killer instrument too, I'd say.
Well, you know, Howard Shapiro used to have directions to make a CytoMut, so you could make your own.
Yeah, right.
What was a cytomet? I heard that term before. I never had anybody.
It was, I had the first edition of his practical flow cytometry. It was actually printed on a dot matrix printer.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. And he had a number of chapters on building your own flow cytometer, and that was called a CytoMut.
Oh.
And you would just scavenge pieces from everywhere and build your own flow cytometer.
Hmm.
Yeah, all the graphics were hand drawn. It was very interesting.
Wow.
So, on top of going to ABRF on the dime of Miltony, I also made a testimonial video for the Agilent platform. So I'm going to be on one of these videos where you point at the screen. Actually, super interesting. And I've been thinking about that for a while now, because I've seen videos and I've seen people do that type of stuff. And in general, I've seen Jacob Berger convinced me that the Attune was a great instrument at a GLIIFCA meeting, where he explained that he had a bunch of samples with very few cells and he didn't want to lose them in centrifugation steps. And so that's why he used hydrodynamic focusing on the Attune. Just like stain the cells, add tons of wash buffer, run that, and you're good. You don't lose tons of cells, keep quality of the data. Great. I've seen, and I'm not naming anybody, but like I've seen other presentations where the arguments in favor of the platforms that were promoted were just not very good. And so when I do these type of things, when I go to talk about the CYTO, about the Pantheon, like I'm always kind of concerned about, you know, is like, what's the value of whatever I'm going to say, and how is it picked up by the people listening to my testimonial? Does anybody care? Which would be, you know, another thing. There's in general, there's no conflict of interest in terms of we do that for free in general. Like they might give you a stipend, but it's never something that you require to make your living. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to be honest in that situation, right? Because you're friends with the people. I mean, you have a good relationship with them. You know, they're gonna ask you to say some words. No matter, and I've done this in the past, no matter how hard you try, you always are leaning more on the positive side of everything. And everything is a feature, not a bug. So it's hard. I think it's really difficult to stay authentic and honest in those situations. Not that you're doing it maliciously or anything, or that you're trying to lie, but it's just really difficult to just say, here are things that are great, here are things that are not so good. And even if you did say that, like, would they really air that apart? They probably just splice out all the good parts and straighten it together anyway. So I've been in those situations. I never really liked it. But what always came out on the back end was, I didn't feel like they were doing some crazy editing to, you know, really change the message that I went in with. But still, it just always felt, I never felt like really proud of myself after those situations. But anyways, I mean, I say they mean a lot. I mean, when I see, especially if I see folks on there who I respect, like you, David, giving testimony about an instrument that I know it's not something that you like, read a product sheet or giving a testimonial. I know it's based off of hands-on experience. I mean, that increases the stock of that instrument tremendously. So I can understand why the manufacturer wants that testimony, wants that information from key opinion leaders like yourself. I don't know. If I'm there's so many good instruments available to us that it's hard for any one of them to have an edge. And I think a nice testimonial from somebody who you know and trust is definitely something that can sway you one way or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't really have that many positive things to say, couldn't you just not give a testimony?
Yeah, you probably would.
Sure.
Probably,
For sure.
So if you are someone who agrees to do those, then you probably like the instrument.
I can think of one conflict of interest in a sense where I pushed for the purchase of a CYTO. I pushed for purchase of Agilent instruments, and I can't really have them unused in my facility without looking like somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. So everything pushes me to make sure that the instruments are well perceived by my users and the public in general. So there's that, I guess, that you could think about when you judge the quality of one of these testimonials. But I think overall, yeah, if you don't think the machine is all that great, then you probably won't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
I'm not doing testimonial for BD, so
Poor BD.
poor BD.
I feel like they're getting.
Well, can I say something
I'm
good
sure
about?
they're doing fine.
I have something to say about BD that they did me good, because I had submitted. We have a service contract on the Fortessa because we can't have that go down, but we couldn't. So and I processed all the paperwork. It was due in September, and everything went through, but actually everything didn't go through. And there is some kind of an automated email system at our purchasing, and somehow something failed. So the paperwork never got sent in. So I didn't have a service contract, and I had a laser go out. This was just a couple weeks ago. And I called them, and they said, you know what? We'll let you just pay the service contract as opposed to the $10,000 pre-certification fee, the repair, and then the service contract again. And that was a bunch of money.
Yeah,
So
That's
yeah,
just-
but maybe they just need customers. So bad. I don't know.
I don't know. We're rough on BD, but I think they need to hear it.
Well, they need to get with the system. Now they were the kings for so long. I think they kind of try to ride around on their reputation as opposed to where they are.
We'll do a podcast on BD one day. That's how it goes.
I still think they're doing quite well in the clinical world.
Oh yeah.
So with those lyrics, those things seem pretty solid.
But I've looked at the Symphony, which is that now what they call the Fortessa? They just changed the box again, and now it's because there are different levels of symphonies as well. There's the S1, the S2, S1
there's
4 lasers.
A3 and A5. They're called.
Yeah.
A3 is basically a Fortessa.
Yeah.
Just has 23 detectors instead of 18.
So they haven't changed their model. Like we started with the FACS scan, the caliber, the LSR2 for Tessa, and then Symphony is just adding more stuff in the box, changing the box every now and then. But
Yeah, the real innovation was the LSR2.
Yeah.
So the transition from LSR1 to LSR2, where they came up with the octagon and trigon and stuff like that. And the, all the switch to the digital electronics from the Vantage. That was basically the last innovation at BD,
Yeah.
and everything has been more of that. So yeah.
yeah,
But hey, I mean, if you can ride that business model for almost 2 decades and still make a profit off of that, it's probably pretty good business sense there.
Yeah, who's stupid now?
I talked to Julie Auger at ABRF. She is now at the Salk Institute in San Diego.
Yes,
And
I finally met her.
and she mentions that 37% of the positions, all the positions in all the core facility at Salk Institute, 37% are currently open.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
And so they're having tons of issues over there to hire people. There's obviously a huge attraction for from the industry, from the biotech industry down there. But even here in Chicago, it's really hard to hire anybody in labs in general, in the SRLs. I think people don't even know what core facilities are, so they don't even look for these positions.
And we really one of the big problems you have is you have to get somebody who's going to commit.
Yeah.
We were talking about that before the recording started, and it's so much work to get somebody up and running. And so you can't go with somebody who's going to go to graduate school in 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
It also might not be the best track for somebody who's looking to go to graduate school, because if you can get a job where you can get a publication, that's going to help you get into graduate school.
Yeah.
And that's depends on the core, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're going to get published. So yeah, that's hard.
What would be your best argument for why you would want to work in a core? So let's say you have somebody who potentially is interested in a position. The salary is not great, but there's a reason people work in cores, and it's a fun job. What would your best argument be to try to attract a candidate?
Well, what has kept me in a core facility environment is kind of being that getting exposure to a ton of different science, right? So maybe you don't have the opportunity to take a deep dive anywhere, but man, I mean, the stuff that comes into a regular course, it spans the gamut of all sorts of things: microbiology, immunology, neuroscience, whatever. You can work with a lot of the graduate students and kind of learn what their project's about and think about where different fields are going. So I mean, that's always been a super positive in my book of not because right, I mean, normally if you're in a graduate program or doing a postdoc, you're like hyper focused about the molecule on a cell type, and every single thing there ever was to know about it. But yeah, I mean, like those people trying to then read a neuroscience paper, like, what's going on here? I don't know any of this. I don't know any of the background information, but you get so much of that background from so many different areas that if you weren't really set in a direction for your career, it would be a great first job to have. Yeah, granted, it's, goal would be to have people stick around, but I'm okay with that entry level position that has a little bit more rotation through it, as people kind of figure out what they want to do with their lives. And plus, I mean, it's also a good mix of engineering and physics, chemistry. You can shape this position any way you wanted to. Like if you really wanted to geek out on software engineering, you could do that. Definitely do that in flow cytometry. Or if you wanted to focus on chemistry, yeah, you got to start working on new dyes and tandems and things like that. You can get it any way you want to. So there's so much flexibility built into the field that there's really something for anybody.
Yeah, I think it's a good job for people who like variety. Your day is going to be different every day, I feel like. I mean, even if you're going to sit at the sorters, running sorters, that's what a lot of the technicians in our facility do, but they get different things every day. They get different problems. It's not necessarily the same thing over and over again. You work with a bunch of different people. So definitely tons of variety. And I think it's also a good job for people who really like to help people. I think that seems to be widespread throughout the core facility staff. Anytime there's a problem, everyone who's been in the core facilities are like, yes, problem, let me help you. Let's figure this out. So definitely people who want that as part of their job. It's a great opportunity for that. Yeah, I was going to say stress level is not necessarily that high. I mean, if you're in a research lab, typically you've got some pressure to publish. There's some speed to that. So you're trying to figure out the balance of how fast can I do things without compromising the quality of the data so that I can beat this other research group at some other university and make sure that I publish faster than them. You don't have that pressure in a core facility, but you still get to learn about all the different science and all the projects and help them figure out how to achieve that. But you yourself are not the one that is feeling the pressure to get to publishing faster or get the data quickly enough so that you can write the grant, and will your grant get funded or not? Like, those are not issues that are directly on you.
And something I really enjoy is how I've had an active participation with the graduate students in their development as a scientist, and because you're helping them design experiments and analyze data and all this, and so you get to be part of that whole journey. And then when you get to see them when they first come in and they ask like the dumbest questions, like, I watched these cells with water, is that okay? And then you see them at their defense and you're like, wow, I've gotten to see this development. And it's actually a very exciting thing to be a participant in, even if it's not wholehearted. It's still a significant portion that you do. So that's something I really get a lot out of at the job. So
I think there's an actual career path in core facilities that leads you all kinds of different ways. So you could stay in the core and eventually become director, and that's fun. You can climb up the ladder and jump to administration at your university, jump in industry. Industry is like a great place to work as well. Either in a biotech or just jump to sales, jump to like application service application
Specialist.
specialist. Yeah. So that type of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do, starting from a core facility. Again, not the best pay, but like you get to learn everything about every possible piece of equipment that's in your lab, and you come out of there and you have tremendous value in the market. So I think as technical directors, that's kind of the only thing we can promise to any candidate is this ability to like learn as much as they'll be willing to take in. So there you go. If you want to work in a core, you can go to Pat Sims.
That's
That's
right. Me first.
You cannot ask for a better mentor. Pat is awesome. Balaji also has currently a position open at UIC. And if you wait a bit, you're going to see another opening at my own lab at the University of Chicago. Laura Johnston is actually leaving the CAD facility. She accepted the position in Seattle with CyTO.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to say this. So it's not particularly shocking or surprising that CyTO would recognize the excellence of Laura's work in our facility. She put her fingerprints all over the lab, and her implications and the care she put in everything that she does drastically changed the image of our facilities over the last, you showed up in 2017, over the last 5 years. So
almost.
Yeah, so I'm surprised now at how different the lab feels in terms of the way we're perceived, the way Laura actually built a YouTube channel, and we're that close from being able to monetize it, which is not the point, but like, come on, it's something.
Although I kind of feel like I got this new job maybe partially because of YouTube.
But anyway,
yeah,
in your
it's
face,
a new type of monetizing.
Yeah. So thank you, Laura. She's not going to be much on the ChUG podcast, I presume, but anytime you want to come, we'll be happy to have you.
Yeah, of course. Always.
So what are you actually doing for CyTO?
So actually my job duties are very highly overlapping with the ones that I currently do right now. So it will, I'll see how it goes, but it sounds like it's going to be just kind of a slight shift for me. No major changes. Although I guess I don't have to talk about CYTO anymore.
Well, that's why you failed at part of your duties was to maintain a reagent bank for CYTO. That you didn't do well there.
No, I did not do great at the CYTO stuff. I got a little distracted and excited by the Aurora stuff and just sort of put all my energy over there instead. But yeah, I'm going to be a technical application specialist, TAS, for CyTO. And it is actually a special position, not one that I have seen come up often. I'm sure we're all familiar with the TAS positions or the FAS, depending on what company you're talking about. And I've always thought that those positions seemed to be as similar to my current one. But the benefit of this UChicago job is that I don't have to travel, and I get to go to the same office every day, and I have my nice office. I'm someone who likes to go to the same place. I'm not really into the living out of your suitcase lifestyle. It's not for me. So I, always see those positions, but they never are particularly appealing to me because of the 60-70% plus travel that typically goes along with those positions. So if there's anybody out there that's listening and finds the TAS/FAS job interesting, my job is pretty great. I'm not leaving this job because I don't like it. It is very awesome. And so CyTO actually came up with that idea to have a online support version. And so currently they have one person who is doing online support, and that means that person is a TAS and does a lot of those TAS duties. But instead of traveling and working with the sales team, they are mostly remote. And so when you email the generic SciTech help email address, you get the online support person. And their existing person is based in Pittsburgh, so East Coast. And they wanted to add another one. And the obvious choice is somebody on the West Coast. Everything kind of fell into place. They actually just recently opened office in Seattle. And I think the press release was like in January, they opened their Seattle office. So it's a mostly remote position, but the person needs to live on the West Coast and specifically be in a short distance to one of their facilities, either Seattle or their headquarters in Fremont. So since I grew up in Seattle, everything worked out very nicely for me.
Excellent.
Very
Great.
nice.
Well, best wishes to you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, gonna wrap it up here.
All right, well,
thanks for
thanks.
coming. And thank you for our listener to being there. It's great. This is not Flow Stars, but darn it, we try our best.
Hopefully it's entertaining.
Yeah. All right, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.